Welcome back to our channel. On today's video, Florida is becoming as expensive as California. We're not talking about your average listing price. Florida is around $400,000, while California is about twice that at $800,000. However, when you start to compare apples per apples, you'll start to realize that prices in Florida are actually as insane as they are in California. You have to recognize the stark differences between these two states. California has a coastline with rugged mountains. Mountains always demand higher real estate prices because people want that. Florida is geographically a swamp. People don't want to live in a swamp. California's weather is favorable, while Florida's weather is unbearable. When you get to a part of California like the desert where the weather is as unbearable as Florida, then the prices become comparable. Florida also has rural poverty, mobile homes that are not allowed to be zoned in California because they have stricter building regulations. Florida also has very loose developer regulations, which means that they can go in and destroy the land with no restrictions, while in California, most of the homes are going to be older. So when you compare the state of Florida, a flooded swamp, to California mountains, you're going to understand that naturally there's going to be a difference between the prices of those two places. In other words, a mountain in Florida would cost the same as a mountain in California, and I'm sure a flooded swamp full of mobile homes and rednecks in California would demand the same as one in Florida. So putting away the regional differences, we're going to compare apples to apples, cities that are comparable and offer about the same things. A 2-bedroom, 1-bath in a bad neighborhood in Miami is currently going for $700,000. This is in the Opa-locka region of Miami, an area known to have high crime rates. Opa-locka's murder rate is higher than Oakland, California, which is the most dangerous city on the West Coast. So not only are you dealing with more crime, a higher murder rate, you're also dealing with higher real estate prices, since in a bad neighborhood in San Diego, for example, a city that's very comparable to Miami, you can find a 2-bedroom, 1-bath for about $619,000. It is a little bit smaller, which means if it was a little bit bigger, the prices would be about the same, somewhere between $600,000 to $700,000 to end up in a very dangerous neighborhood. San Diego and Miami is really comparing apples to apples. They're both among the most expensive cities in the country. They both offer beaches, perfect weather in the opinion of some, with the exception, of course, that San Diego has mountains, which means that the expensive real estate pushes further inland in San Diego. A 1,600 square foot home in San Diego will run you something like $750. To find a historic profile home in Miami of about the same character, you're talking almost $900,000. We're looking at historic homes from the same era with the same square footage. Usually houses in Florida are going to have more bedrooms within the same square footage. That's why we decided to look at the square footage with the historic homes and not look at the bedrooms. Many times in Florida, we're going to squeeze more people into the same house, which is going to mean that homes are going to have more bedrooms. That's why we compared it by square footage and not by bedrooms on that one. So what would a house directly on the beach in Miami cost you? Currently, there's a 7-bedroom house directly on the water, and it's going for about $26.5 million. I guess you would really have to like the water a lot to pay that price tag. To be directly on the water in San Diego, you're paying $26.8 million. Guys, these prices are almost identical. Miami is the southernmost city on the East Coast. San Diego is the southernmost city on the West Coast. These houses are about the same. They offer the same thing, a house directly on the beach. They have about the same design and about the same types of bedrooms and options. Just goes to show that really prices in Florida and prices in California are really about the same when you start to compare apples to apples. One of the most insane properties in California right now is going for $185 million in the hills outside of Los Angeles, overlooking the city. Without a doubt, that's some of the most exclusive real estate you can find in the state of California. The most insane price that I could find in Florida was $174 million for a beachside estate in my hometown, Naples, Florida. Both Florida and California are going to cap out at about the same price range, somewhere between 170 to 180 million. So even if you're in that elite status of real estate, you're still looking at about the same price tag in California as you are in South Florida. So we can see that from the trenches of the hoods all the way to the most exclusive real estate, prices between Florida and California seem to correlate when you start to compare apples to apples, or should I say mangoes to grapevines. So let's compare Tampa to San Francisco. And I know you're thinking, wait, hold on, Jose. Clearly San Francisco is much more expensive than Tampa. Yeah, but San Francisco isn't a completely rundown ghetto like most of Tampa. When you start to look at crime analytics and you start to compare, again, apples to apples, you start to realize that prices in San Francisco are really not that different from prices in Tampa. And I know right now the people that watch Fox News are typing. If you've never been to Tampa and San Francisco, please shut your mouth because you don't know what you're talking about. The average income in San Francisco is over $100,000. The average person in Tampa can't get a call back if they applied at Popeyes. In fact, I know people that live in Tampa and they commute to Sarasota for work because they can't find jobs. So again, we're going to compare apples to apples here. In San Francisco, it's not out of the ordinary for somebody to make $100,000 a year. In fact, you pretty much have to make $100,000 a year if you're going to live in San Francisco. I don't get my information from watching Fox News. I actually spent $11,000 to go to California to see San Francisco for myself, so I knew what the crap I was talking about. So if you're a complete moron who watches Fox News and all you know is, I heard Fox News say San Francisco was full of pompous, then you're a complete moron because you're listening to the radio or TV and you haven't gone to these places, okay? So you have to understand the difference between somebody like myself, who is a world-renowned traveler, and a complete come basura like you who watches Fox News. I just want to get that disclaimer out there because I know some of you guys don't understand the difference between San Francisco and Tampa. How many homeless people have we seen on this stretch of road? How many pieces of garbage have we seen on this drive that we just took through San Francisco? Do you see any homeless people? Do you see any poop on the side of the road? Do you see any needles? No. What I see are homes worth into the millions. Right now, you can get a home on Seacliff, literally overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, for about $19 million, being one of the most expensive pieces of real estate in the entire city of San Francisco. Now, right now, the most expensive property around Tampa is $17 million. It's this home right here, which is on Treasure Island. Literally, they don't even have photos for it because it's a new construction, so they must not even be done building it. I personally think that San Francisco, in that price range, is a much better buy than Treasure Island. Overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge versus overlooking Treasure Island, I'm going to have to go ahead and say that looks like San Francisco in that price range is a better buy than Tampa. Sure, overall, San Francisco is more expensive than Tampa, but they also have more high-end real estate. When you start to look structure per structure, neighborhood per neighborhood, and you just kind of put neighborhoods up against each other that are the same type of neighborhoods, it's going to cost you about the same. Because Tampa is a city of poverty, while San Francisco is a city of wealth. Economically, overall, California is in a much better position than Florida, and that will explain why in Florida there's more availability of low-income housing, while in California people are better off. They're able to get into the middle class, something almost unobtainable in Florida. And that doesn't even factor in snowbirding in Florida, which means that a lot of the more expensive properties in the state are empty most of the year. And if you got rid of the 1% and just left the vast majority of us, the 99%ers, Florida's income would actually be lower than Mississippi and Alabama. In a nice neighborhood in Tampa like the one we're driving through right now, a 3-bedroom, 3-bath will cost you roughly over $3 million. And again, that's a simple historic 3-2, nothing fancy. In San Francisco, a house near the water as well, and a historic neighborhood close to downtown as well, pretty much comparable, is also going to be in the $3 million price range. So we're not talking these vast differences. In fact, you could almost argue that for under $3 million, you could find a better built home in San Francisco. And we're talking neighborhoods close to downtown, close to the water, in the middle of the city. So if you live in a shoebox from the 1920s in a neighborhood called the Fruit Bowl in Tampa, please shut your mouth and get that crap off the road before it kills somebody. Because there's always that person,
I live in a nice neighborhood 5 minutes from downtown Tampa, and I only paid $89,000 for my trailer back in 1972.
yeah, well, here's a house in Fresno, California for $140,000. They have affordable real estate in California too. Some places you definitely don't want to live. Oh, just like in Florida. Well, I guess it's time for you to shut up again. Talking about Fresno, for $409,000, you can get a 4-2 not that far from a homeless camp. Here's what a homeless camp in Fresno, California looks like. Just like a homeless camp in Florida. For $409,000, you can get a 4-2 in Bradenton, Florida, not far from a homeless camp. Here's a homeless camp in Florida. Just like the homeless camp in California. Fresno, California, a city in California full of homelessness. Bradenton, Florida, a city in Florida full of homelessness. A 4-2 in Bradenton, 409. A 4-2 in Fresno, 409. Both cities have the same exact problem. And if you have $409,000, you can buy a home in either one of these cities. We'll have 4 bedrooms and 2 baths and a homeless camp not that far away. Fresno is further from the beaches, but you can still do it in a day's drive. Fresno is also surrounded by mountains, which means you have more outdoor activities like camping, hiking, and homelessness. Let's say you want to live in the countryside. In Ocala horse country, this is what you get for about $3.1 million. In Vacaville, California, somewhat comparable home, $2.3 million. Now it is going to have a smaller yard, land is worth more in California, and of course, I would have to admit that the scenery in Vacaville is a lot nicer than the scenic views of Ocala's horse country. But we could assume that if we were just to match the prices up a little bit, maybe make that house a little bit bigger, give it some more square footage, boom, we would be at about the same price tag for Vacaville as we would as a house in Ocala horse country, which goes to show that once again, there are comparable properties where you can get exactly the same thing both in country, city, whatever type of setting you want to put it. There are comparables in both states that offer you for the same price tag about the same thing. Of course, if you don't mind living in a trailer in the middle of a lake in Florida, in that case, Florida is cheaper. But if you want to live in a decent house in a decent neighborhood in a fairly nice city, it's going to cost you exactly the same to buy real estate in California as it will in Florida. With a few exceptions, like the fact that California has higher taxes and Florida now has higher insurance rates. When you factor in liabilities and infrastructure, you might actually find that Florida is more expensive than California, since many of these affordable houses in Florida are on well water and septic tanks. They don't have access to city utilities. California also has stricter building codes, which means that people in California don't have to worry about their neighborhood or their wetlands in their backyard becoming a development overnight like we do here in California. A constant problem in California has been eliminated simply by stricter building codes, where in Florida, they let developers do whatever they want, which means that your wetlands in the backyard could tomorrow turn into a gated community. When you start to look at environmental issues and sustainability, California is further ahead than Florida, and a lot of the problems that we're creating in Florida, they're not allowing to even take place in California. It's very interesting to see Floridians complain about development and growth and how everything's growing too fast and how it's not what it used to be. Just remember that that $20 million house on the water in California is 100 years old, and the $20 million house in Florida on the beach doesn't even have a photo yet because they're still building it. One of the reasons that overall California has higher real estate prices is because they don't let people destroy their environment. They don't let developers get variances and create things that shouldn't have taken place like they do in Florida left and right. We see this every day in Florida where developers are changing the rules of what's allowed so they can build what they want. All the while, the liability of these shortcuts that developers are taking fall on the purchasers of these new developments in Florida, many times uneducated buyers who don't understand the liability they are buying into. And all that affects real estate prices, making sure that California has a strong real estate market, while Florida is more vulnerable. Well, I hope you guys liked today's video. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on everything we've talked about. And what I'm saying right now, does it make sense to you? Or do you think I went too far as usual? If California did not have these environmental restrictions and building codes to litigate the natural disasters that they deal with, we could assume that California would also have 80 million people today. While Florida's population is out of control, California doesn't have that overdevelopment problem. What they have is real estate appreciation. They really don't have to worry about their coastal dooms turning into new developments in California. Meanwhile, in Florida, every inch of land and water is being destroyed. Developers here have their hands in everything. Hope you guys liked the video. Make sure to leave a comment with your thoughts and opinions.